So welcome everybody to Conversations in American Democracy. It's good to see you. We have a lot going on, much to talk about. Unfortunately, Kurt McCauley's not here to go over the Constitution, and in fact we're having a bit of a dispute. He wants to talk about the amendments, and I want to talk about the articles, particularly the role of Congress that seems to have sort of blended with the executive branch, and there is no independent Congress. And Mike points out who often brings us questions from the citizenship test that we've pretty much run out of questions. And you know what, in fact, we'll get to Mark, and you want to talk about local government for a moment, briefly?
Sure, briefly.
And then we could also talk about last night's now infamous Board of Education meeting.
Oh, man, yeah, that was...
But go
So
ahead.
I wasn't able to attend, but I did watch yesterday's meeting. We now have a new city manager who was elected by a 3-2 vote. But if you look at Flagler Live, and the city did decide, well, after we elected this gentleman, and both of them were very talented, they were, both did interviews on YouTube, either one would have been a good pick. I found it interesting that the city, after voting clearly 3-2, decided, no, we wanted to publicly accept him unanimously, so they did another vote in which all 5 voted for him, even though it's a public record. So if you see Pierre on Flagler Live, he posts, city manager accepted unanimously. That's not what happened. Truth in news? I don't know. They approved with unclear guidance, utility vehicles now being able to park in your driveway. Who knows exactly the size and length and height and everywhere else that none of them could agree on, but they approved it anyway. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. They also had a very great conversation about the long-term growth of the promenade, which is over by where the city hall is and the city park area. Everybody heard about the putt-putt range is going to go in across from the golf course. Well, now they have a scheduled 100-room hotel that's going to go in as well. So they're really seriously trying to grow that area. They see that area as your downtown. Now there is a survey, as I said before, that asked these kind of questions to the citizens. What do you want for Palm Coast? Do you want it to stay a bedroom community? Do you want it to turn into Jacksonville or St. Augustine? Highly recommend looking for those surveys and taking them and looking for your input. But I was amazed to see that there were over 300 views of the city council meeting yesterday, which is amazing when it's usually averaging 20. So more people are paying attention. A lot going on with the city. The vice mayor was selected again as the vice mayor for another year, even though Councilman Ty Miller won the vote 3-2. Again, it was very odd to take a look at that, but it sounded like Ty was like, I don't care whether I'm the vice mayor or not. She's doing a great job, even though he was elected by vote, so now she has it. Pretty interesting, entertaining if you have an hour to spend, so stay in touch.
Yeah, speaking of hours to spend, last night's Board of Education meeting ran to 3 a.m., had 103 votes to try to decide who will be the chair. And is it Will Furry or is it Chong? Chong is and Will Furry is the number 2, the vice chair.
I thought he had to resign because he was running.
He will have to resign to run he's running for Congress. So he will at some point have to resign, but he wanted to be chair. You can read about it in Flagler Live, and read about it, but it points out further the dysfunction in our community leadership in our government. This is an area I try to be objective. There's some subjectivity here, and that's my concern at the State Board of Education, which, by the way, consists of 7 members, one of whom once taught in a classroom. The others are lawyers, businessmen, and doctors, and so on. One has a degree in education, have unanimously approved something called the Phoenix Declaration, which is written by the Heritage Foundation, the same Heritage Foundation that's responsible for Project 2025. And it is, in fact, an extension of Project 20. Some of the language is actually lifted directly from the 2025. Anybody read it? Get a chance? Some of you. Al wanted to. Yeah.
Both as an educator, former educator, and as someone who is educated, I do have a comment on this document. And if I could be a little more specific,
Please.
if you look down at truth and goodness. Now, I am against truth and goodness. However, I'm willing to look at what this document says about truth and goodness. Education must be grounded in truth. I don't have a problem with that.
These are quotes.
In fact, I'm reading it. I'm quoting it.
Yeah,
And so far, the Heritage Foundation and I are running right down the same track. Students should learn that there is an objective truth that is knowable. I couldn't say it more succinctly. There is an objective truth, and you can know what it is. Science courses must be grounded in reality, not ideological fads. I'm not exactly clear what they mean by ideological fads. It's suggested that they're talking about LGBTQ things and that's saying that you could be a boy when you're a girl. And I'm not sure what that means, so I'll hold off on that one.
well, may I interrupt you? Do you think that the theory, Darwin's
The
theory of
theory of
evolution is a fad, just
Right.
the passing?
Okay.
But
I
anyway,
will- I will get back to-
I'll be quick.
I will get back to Darwin and evolution on this thing. This whole thing is only like 3 or 4 sentences, so it's not going to take me long.
Yeah.
The next one is the really great one. Students should learn that good and evil exist.
At
They
school?
just said,
at school, yeah.
they just said that objective reality and there is truth that you can be known. Is it true that good and evil exist objectively? No. You can't measure it. You cannot show that people, now in terms of an English teacher, people can do good things or evil things and can be instructed, help to understand what those are. But to come out and say truth and evil, good and evil exist, that's a supernatural idea. That goes right back to God and this whole Christian thing hovering over all of us. For you to say that there is this objective truth, there is no such thing. So, once again, it starts out saying that there's objective truth and it's knowable. Well, that couldn't be better said. The idea that evil and good are objective truths is absurd. And it runs through the rest of the document if you read the document also. There are just so many of these layered upon layered upon layered, where I say to you 3 things that make perfect sense and that you agree with, and then I throw in, and frogs are really blue.
Yes, yes.
And then I go on to my next point. And I could have gone through the whole document, but I thought that was the best one. That was the gem. Oh, and as far as Darwinism, that was the one that I wanted to say. Evolution is not an objective truth. I'm a Darwinist. I believe in the theory of evolution. It is a widely held scientific belief.
Provable scientific belief.
Not really.
Yep.
Not really. It's not objective. You would need, the problem with it, Ken, is you would need millions of years to prove it. That's why it remains as a theory. And that is that we see the results of evolution, We acknowledge that that is the most likely reason that we have the diversity that we have on our planet, but we can't prove it as the source of it, because that experiment would take millions of years.
But don't we have if you pick any specific creature, you can follow its evolution from before we knew what it was to what it is now.
Yeah, you can follow what
In reverse.
you can follow what a biologist will tell you is its evolution, but you don't. But he can't prove that that's how it got to be that way. He can say, look, doesn't this look like this? Doesn't this wing, this little bitty change in the lobe inside the fish look like it's turning into a lung? And you can say, yeah, it does look like that, but you can't prove it. It's all subjective. Evolution is subjective. As much of every, so is, to this point, well, you could argue that one. Evolution clearly is not an objective truth. The distance between Los Angeles and Chicago is an objective truth, an objective fact. Evolution is not an objective fact.
Truth is
I mean,
subjective.
Yeah, truth
That's
is,
exactly
but
right.
I,
Truth is the same,
I'll
is your truth.
save my
the
argument,
same as your truth.
yeah, I'll save my argument. Kurt, go ahead.
The whole idea of a cosmic event, like what happened to the dinosaurs, proved that, they interrupted the whole evolutionary cycle, killed almost everything in the world. Well, we started over again, right? But that's all that at any time, something like that could interrupt the whole cycle.
But, at any rate, and I would argue, I'll argue with you, you're an English teacher, not a
Yes.
science teacher, so okay. But we know that bacteria evolved to develop resistance to antibiotics. Now, the creationists will say, oh, but that's only a little microscope, that doesn't count as the blood, and so on, that's their argument. But
I think
been around
I
this.
think it's so widely accepted that don't even, it's almost a semantic argument.
Yeah,
at
yeah,
this point.
and,
But I still don't think it's objective.
yeah, okay, we
To
can
reach
argue
the
that,
level-
yeah.
To reach the level of human being, the
Yeah.
fact that humans evolved from bacteria is still a subjective argument.
Right. Yeah, please, go, Bill, go
And I
ahead.
came here just for this issue,
Oh, did you, yeah?
and it disturbed me when I read the material, for obvious reasons. So I wrote a letter that I'd like to read. Take a couple of minutes,
Please,
if you
go
don't
ahead.
mind. But I'm looking at the authors of this in the first place. 50 prominent educators, supposedly, and then
Yeah,
10
are they? Yeah.
10 organizations. I went to look up, what are the organizations, what are the names? Unpublished.
What?
Unpublished.
So, yeah.
You have to get
You
the
have
Freedom
no
of
source.
Information Act in order to attain who the specific authors were. They're trying to protect the agita and the lashback that's going to go as a result of them reading this as we have. This, and the organizations aren't listed either. So that's where it starts. And they're all conservative people and organizations. They say that, but that's all they say. So these are the authors with which we're working right now. So I'm some thoughts after I read the document, right? My name is Bill Green, and I stand before you not as a partisan, but as a concerned resident of Flagler County, someone who believes deeply in the promise of public education and the principle that it should serve all our children, not just those whose families share a particular political or religious worldview. We're here today to discuss the Phoenix Declaration, a document recently adopted by the Florida Department of Education and now poised to shape how our local schools operate. On its face, the Declaration promotes values like academic excellence, character formation, and parental rights. These are worthy goals, but we must ask whose values, whose history, whose children are being centered, and who are being left behind. The Declaration is not just a set of educational details. It's part of a broader political movement closely aligned with Project 25, as you discussed, that seeks to reshape public institutions around a narrow conservative ideology. It claims to speak for we the people, but it does not reflect the full diversity of our community, racially, religiously, or politically. Let me be clear, I am not here to attack anyone's beliefs. I am here to defend the right of every student, black, white, Latino, Asian, indigenous, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, atheist, gay, straight, conservative, liberal. To see themselves reflected in the curriculum, to ask hard questions, and to learn the full, unvarnished truth of our nation's history. That includes the brutal reality of slavery, not as a footnote or a benefit, but as a foundational injustice. It includes the contributions of women, immigrants, LGBTQ Americans, not as optional add-ons, but as essential threads in the fabric of our shared story. So I ask our school board, our educated and our elected officials, will you ensure that the Phoenix Declaration is implemented in a way that respects all families, not just those who agree with its ideology? Will you protect teachers' ability to teach honest history, even when it's uncomfortable? Will you guarantee that our public schools remain places of inclusion, not indoctrination? This is not about being woke or anti-woke, although woke is mentioned in the Declaration. They want to fight woke and get back to their reality. This is not about woke or anti-woke. It's about being awake to the needs of every child, every parent, every future citizen of the country. Let's make sure Flagler County schools reflect the full promise of American democracy, not just liberty for some, but liberty and learning for all.
Well said.
Very good. Good job, good job. Yeah, please, go ahead.
I have a question. In that Phoenix document, does it define what woke is? Is it anywhere in any of this curriculum, do they tell people what they're fighting? They're anti-woke. What is woke to them?
They never define it in that document that I read.
No.
No, because
I haven't delved deeply into it.
Equality and diversity, okay? Truth. Yeah. they
It's
don't
social
Yeah,
awareness. It's
yeah.
being aware of what's going on around you.
It's-
They don't even know what it is. They use it as a term that's negative when it's
Yeah.
actually constructive.
Well,
But
see-
your point is that, this is opinion laden. And my question, which speaks to what where you're going with it, is, what is the place of opinions in the policymaking of our state, of our educational system? And if there's items in here that are not defined, how do we know exactly what it is that we're signing up for?
Right. I mean, if you're saying this program's basic guideline is anti-woke, okay, well, tell me what woke is,
Right.
so I can know what guidelines and policies and your opinions and your sources for you to document a guideline that you're going to teach my children.
And where do opinions fall into the arena of policymaking? I'm really honestly curious. How many opinions are there in all of our policies?
I hope
in our
our
state
children
and
learn,
federal?
I hope our students learn that there's a wide diversity of opinions and that they can have to think for themselves, by the way, which this document seems to oppose, think for themselves and decide where they fit in this spectrum.
I mean, I taught first
Yeah.
graders how to distinguish between fact and opinion.
Yeah.
It seems like it's a tenet of
Of
what's
education.
real and what's not real, what's
The
woke
truth.
and what's not.
I don't think the author's here. By the way, and I would suggest that you could argue with me that it's not that they can't define what woke is, but they won't.
They won't.
Because they're going to discover that one of the most woke people, no, I don't believe this, one of the most woke people was Jesus. Okay? Jesus was woke.
Right.
And that's why
Okay?
he upset the whole
Right.
Yeah,
He would-
yeah.
But there would be a problem now, because he would be in an ICE detention camp.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
He was an immigrant.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
His skin
yeah.
color was
Scary.
wrong. He spoke the wrong language according to the Romans. He had some ideas that were not acceptable. Hey, that's what happens.
Okay. Okay. So,
But
yeah,
he was a tough guy.
so the opening, for those of you who haven't read it, and I'll send it out again and urge you, I've got one copy. Eric, you've got my other copy. You can keep it. So it begins, in this time of moral and political crises, too many schools have lost their way.
Okay, what does that mean?
Well, all right.
Let's start with that.
That's why I read it and said, are we in the midst of moral? Well, we might be in the midst of political crises. Are we in the midst of moral crises? Maybe we are, since we
No moral
toss out immigrants and so on. Have school.
crisis is in the White White House.
Yeah, well, okay, it starts at the top. But have schools lost their way? So now here's the second one, and this concerns me, okay? It is the responsibility of Americans' parents,
No.
educators, and policymakers to recommit ourselves to the central purposes of education.
Read that again.
Well,
Okay, yeah, I'll read it
what is
again,
it again?
okay? It is the responsibility of America's parents, educators, and policymakers to recommit ourselves to the central purposes of education.
So I see people going like this, right?
Yeah,
And,
but
and have they went on to define the central purpose of?
again, I shun to think that I have to revert to being a rabbi for a second. But one of the art of biblical narrative always asks the question, what's missing? And so when we have America's parents, educators, and policymakers recommitting themselves to education, who's missing?
Scientists?
Okay, scientists? How about we, the people, the taxpayers? And here's Mark's cue. He doesn't have his
like how they use-
his real estate tax bill with, but look at your real estate. We're paying for the schools.
Right.
But we have no say. We, the people, are not part of the process. And with this, I restate, I personally believe that Moms for Liberty and other parental rights organizations should have a 100% say of how Flagler County schools are run, just so long as they're willing to pay the 100% of the costs of running our schools. That would be about $300 million a year. Until they come up with $300 million a year, we are paying, the schools belong to all of us, and we all get to say, but this immediately shuts out taxpayers and so on. It's only parents, educators, and policymakers. By the way, and I throw out to you, are parents good deciders about educational policy, and are they good teachers? Is homeschooling a good thing? And I'll refer you to the study, and you can email me, and I'll just send you to the study that says that 56% of all parents, when asked, should we be teaching Arabic numerals in our public schools, will say no. Okay? And a similar statement about Latin letters. Should our students be learning? That doesn't have a majority say no, but it's got a sizable number of people who say no.
Wasn't Latin, in days gone by, Latin was a measure of your intelligence if you were taught at a higher schooling to understand Latin, or am I misconstruing?
No, you
What was the common language of the
Histo-
educated?
his-
The rich,
historically, that's
rich,
correct.
the monarchy, and the
First-
princess,
Yeah.
right?
That's why Catholic schools held on to it as
That's
long
right.
as they did. I mean, I graduated in the 60s, and they were still teaching Latin, okay? So, and Caesar's wars.
It was the language of the educated.
But I believe,
Yes, that's it. It was considered the language of the
The
educated.
people that could read
Yeah.
and write.
yeah, I believe free public education began in Boston with the Boston Latin School. Yes.
Called
Yeah.
the dead language when I was
Yeah.
in school.
Well,
I think what's in-
Dead
come
language.
on.
Well,
That was to inflame the teachers.
I think what's important to see is the slippery slope
Yes.
of education from, you had public school, for a long time you didn't have the public school that we have today to meet the needs of all of the students, but you always had private, high-end, religious-based, or in alternative options for parents who could afford it, who could put their kids in a better school or a better situation. And that existed for a long time until the politics of that group became powerful enough to push their ideas, their views, their goals, not just in the public school, the Imagine School and the Christian schools and all of that, to now start to push their views into the public sector. So you see this as a transitional sliding of what we've all feared for, ever since we started reading 2025, 2 years ago, of the loss of independent thinking. And what concerns me is the teachers that understand their love for teaching children, educating them to know the difference between truth and true. And there's a huge conversation going on right now in society about what that is and how that's different. And I loved Al's point of, it is true that there's X number of miles from point A to B.
That's objective.
That's objective true. Truth is what you believe and stand by, whether you're religious. You know, there are people right now that still believe the world is flat. There are people right now that still believe the world's only 4,000 years old and have huge seminars talking about how they discredit all the science. Truth and true are absolutely necessary to teach our students and our children, and even a lot of us as parents, to understand, to make that, give me enough information and I'll make that decision.
So in this document, you could turn it around, and I, as a teacher, should be very comfortable to tell my class that a belief in Christ and Christianity is subjective. It's not an objective truth.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but,
I don't think that they wrote this in order for me to be able to say that
No.
as a teacher.
no,
Right.
and that's the sloppiness and contradictory nature. They don't want slavery taught because it makes America look bad. Yet it says we need to compare the good and the evil. I don't think they expressed themselves very well. They need a good teacher. Anyway.
They've lost sight of the fact that there are common goods in society. That is for the common good that we have public education. It is for the public good that we have libraries. It's for the public good that we have police department, those sorts of things. It is for the public good, and that's why it's done for everyone, and that's why it comes out of the tax base. And now it's being,
Questioned.
well, it's not, well, it's
Good.
public
It's
good
being
that
debated.
that's being eliminated, number one. And all these other things are taking its place, but we're still footing the bill. If it's not for a common good, if you're not going to educate those kids properly, why the hell are you taking my tax money if I don't have anything to say about it? You know?
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if you're going to take away my library, then why the hell am I paying the county taxes?
Well, part
Yeah.
of the philosophy is to extract the citizen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just focus on the educators, the school system, and
Then that's
Curriculum.
taxation
And the
without
curriculum, right.
representation.
I would substitute, instead
Meanwhile,
of citizen,
we're footing
we
the
the
bill.
people.
And
Yeah.
that's taxation without representation.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
go.
I'm also,
Sue, go ahead.
Formation?
I'm also,
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Sue, go ahead.
so
You need sharp elbows, just keep pushing your way into
Go.
this
This is
conversation.
just starting to feel more and more like, going back to the days of segregation. Whereas in the past, to your point, Kathy, we the taxpayers paid for this service that was, decided to be a common good for all, right? The people that didn't agree with what was being presented in the schools, they had a choice. They could take their children out and put them into something that more aligned with their values, their beliefs, and
Right.
et cetera, et cetera. So what's happening now, are we flipping that around, and now we're saying, well, if you don't believe in this policy, you can take your child out.
Somewhere else.
That's
Yeah.
Somewhere
Yeah.
else.
Well, that's where charter schools come in.
It's exactly right.
And that's
And
where
then-
the legislatures, Republican legislatures are voting, where a public school is just as good as a charter school, and the money could go to a charter school. So let's spin off public schools, make these charter schools, and we'll
Yeah.
But it's not like.
brainwash the kids, and this is what they're gonna learn. Lock, stock, and barrel. Meanwhile, whatever's left over goes to the public side.
Cool, yeah.
They're
Charter
draining
schools
it.
right now they're mainly focused on one single religion. correct, or one thought process, there's not.
Generally speaking.
The charter schools are public schools. However, the school board and we, the people, don't determine the curriculum.
But that line-
Private
that
schools are
line's
something
becoming
else.
more and more
Well,
blurred.
now
Yeah.
yes, because charter schools, and if you read about what's going on in Duval County and on the state level, charter schools. First of all, a group of parents in a public school can get together and decide that we're now a charter school, which means that they determine the curriculum, not anybody else. But we continue to pay, and now there are corporations that run charter schools, including the Imagine School, that are private corporations that are making a lot of money on this business. And there are 20 schools that have been targeted by the Hope schools, Hope Education, was it something along those lines, in the state level, that are trying to change public schools into charter schools, so they will control the curriculum and get rid of these terrible
So
ideas
really,
that
this
they.
is like almost, we have such a fight right now with like property taxes. So our property taxes go to fund our schools, as we've been discussing. So is this more of a thought of, let's continue to privatize schools as much as we can, that gives us an excuse not to have property taxes?
So now we
right,
lose
right.
that representation argument.
Yeah, that we have that, I don't know how schools would support themselves without property taxes, but, although I've heard some proposals do away with property taxes except school taxes, but that's a possibility as well. So Kathy provided a segue, second paragraph. Education is the cornerstone of individual opportunity, family flourishing, and national prosperity. Which sounds okay. Then goes on, every child should have access to high-quality, content-rich education, comma, and that's right out of actually our Florida Constitution, Article 9, Section 1, should you need to know. But that education that fosters the pursuit of the good, the true, and the beautiful.
No.
Okay?
Answer's no.
So that they may achieve
That's
their
all
full
subjective.
God-given potential.
Answer's no.
Period. Why not? Why is the answer no?
I didn't know that I made it in there.
Okay? Yeah, the
Unmeasurable.
beautiful, you're there, okay?
Right. You don't get to come.
Well, beauty is so subjective.
Yeah,
Probably
yeah.
the most subjective of the.
It's right up there with
It's
pornography.
yeah, right. And don't forget the totalitarian governments, and you well know such this art is degenerate. So we'll take
Ray, we
get
don't-
rid of
we're not
it.
raising our hands and yelling
Yeah,
over each
Ray.
other.
Yeah, really. This is like a family table. Come and yell, push your way in. Go ahead, Ray.
Yes, I think this meeting for the county, they were looking at budgets and possible taxations, and they're considering taking
Speak up.
a lot of funds from the library area. Because they built this place here, they think that the library is satisfied with a bit of Flatware County, and I believe they owe the library money because they took money from the library to build another building. And my principles, as being, believe it on the conservative side, when I do a budget, if I take money from my vacation, I know I want to go, I'm still going on vacation, so I need to put that money back in there. You know, you don't just ignore it. They seem to ignore that they took money from another fund, which is the library, and now they're considering, because there was a motion made by Adam on planning and zoning, that, you know, it's a good idea, maybe we could get rid of the library and help put the money to the roads and the police and the EMS, which they are needed. But the thing is, the libraries are needed, and I also believe we need to extend the libraries to little satellite areas, to the far west end of the county, where, you know, it's a small population, but there might be a child out there. We're in the belief, because, you know, I have a cell phone, I have a laptop, but not a lot of people have these
Right.
accessories, and
Not
that's where
everybody
they go to
anyway.
the library. And if you look at people that were successful, a good example is Eminem. Eminem used to go to the library to educate himself. And there's so many other people that were, Lincoln. I mean, he used to go to the library to get books to read law under the candlelight, you know? The
I think,
libraries are very
I think very importantly along what you're saying right now, Ray, is a place for kids to hang out.
Yes, yes.
And we have a great teen room here in the library. So what do you want your kid to be doing after school? And if he says, a bunch of my friends are meeting at the library, I'm going, yeah, baby, you know, I mean, so you have that level also.
Yeah, yes, yes. And also for music. They come here for, you know, sometimes they don't have the access for music, and they come here and they get the access to listen to music. You know, that's been always where the library was an access door for the youth.
I wouldn't have made it through COVID without this library.
Yeah.
So
I am serious. I would go online and I would put in my holds and I would come and they'd bring them to the front door and put them on the table. I wouldn't have made it.
So December, they're gonna have a second meeting, possibly defunding the library.
Yeah, yeah, and that's why we need to speak up about the library.
If you come to the county meeting for the second reading, it'd be a good
I'm
time.
curious why you didn't finish the sentence that you were just reading, why you stopped at beautiful, because I love the cause, or the lack thereof, the cause and effect.
I think I did, but I think
So
there was a record. So we want students to know the good, the true, and the beautiful, so that they may achieve their full God-given potential.
Of course.
Yeah, he did say that.
Okay?
Oh, you did
Yeah,
say
yeah, I
it.
did
You
say
said
it,
it.
yeah.
Okay.
But there were people who were, just reacting to the first half of the sentence. But, and so that's a dog
That's
whistle.
Zeus that they're referring to. right?
Yeah, well, you
Yeah,
go
that guy.
tell them.
Zeus.
You're gonna, you're gonna wind up in exile or something. You better be
But you have to
careful.
see the bigger picture.
Which is?
The views of some, an example of 2025, the conservative, MAGA, whatever you want to call them, are to project, control the people. The library is a challenge to that. They can't control it. They can't get rid of books successfully, though they've tried. They have network, internet, availability to children. Children can gather, young people can gather and share thoughts of the day, critical thinking, and that goes against or is challenging to their goals of controlling or focusing the views that are important to them, which is what you see inherently in every effort that's happening within the conservative group, and not just Florida, many other states that have supermajorities that are able to change the school district and change the views are trying to remove, whether it's TikTok, whether it's control of the internet, whether it's books. It's all has a similar goal and objective, and that's to minimize and reduce the exposure of critical thinking and thoughts that go against. And I don't know about you guys, but I had 2 children, raised them, tried to make them as critical thinking as everything, but they both went off to college, and within 6 months came home and had every thought in the world in their head because they got exposed to other people and other cultures and other religions. And it was an amazing, and they became their own person.
That's right.
Not just what I had tried to do, and I was not a helicopter pilot by any means, but that's what the whole purpose of that growth is. And that's why the opening of this document and many others say, we don't like the morals and goals that our children are pursuing because it's not theirs.
Right.
It's not their view. And that's the conversation that we as parents, we as citizens, especially over the next 6, 8 months, 10 months, is we need to challenge the elected officials that are standing there, Randy Fine, stating whatever, and standing for them and say, do you really believe and you own what you say? Because what are we seeing? What did we see yesterday? A vote that was 100% senators voted to release the Epstein files. Wait a minute, 100%. That's as bipartisan as you can,
Yeah.
and it was almost 100% in the House.
Yeah.
427 to 1.
To
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, to one.
So I applaud the conversations we have. I applaud the efforts of people that are trying to hold a mirror up to these groups and go, you are ineffective and you will never win. No school board is ever going to successfully change the mindsets of young people as they grow and get exposed to other young people. Look back at your children. Look at your experience, and it's always been like that. But we need to be aware, we need to be educated, and that's why this kind of stuff,
Yeah.
we need to talk about it.
Just a personal note, the sentence before the one I read, and I think I read it too, it says, education is the cornerstone of individual opportunity, family flourishing, and national prosperity. Just so you know, the word cornerstone, lifted directly from Psalm 118, is a dog whistle to Christians and causes them to perk up and pay attention. It's to say, we're talking to you, and then the rest of us who don't hear it won't hear it.
Yeah, because Christ was a
No, no.
cornerstone, metaphorically.
Yeah,
Christ was a
exactly,
cornerstone.
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, because the cornerstone that was rejected becomes the chief cornerstone, and then that's Jesus. Parents are the primary educators of their children. Okay? Parents should have the freedom to choose learning environments that align with their values and best meet the children's individual learning needs, with public education funding following the child. Everybody happy with that?
Wait a minute.
No.
With them saying that, read what character building or something in
Yeah.
that second paragraph says, because that contradicts.
I take that-
Yes, it does.
It contradicts
Go ahead,
that.
go ahead, say it.
Character formation. Education must prepare children for the challenges and responsibilities of adulthood. That endeavor entails much more than merely preparing students for a career. A properly educated education is focused on full formation of a child's, particularly the child's character. Education should cultivate the virtues and discipline necessary for self-governance. Students must be held accountable for their behavior, both to learn that their choices have consequences and maintain the order necessary for learning to proceed. Well, wait a minute. Half of that is what your parents are supposed to be doing,
That's
right?
right.
Yeah.
Publicly and in meetings,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They gotta control their own behavior first before they can
But that's
profess to
another- yeah.
teach their children how to
I
behave
mean-
properly in public settings.
That argument is older than I am about, hey, look, I sent my child to go to school. You should be teaching my child and not parenting my child. Well,
They want it both ways.
you
Yeah.
can't have both sides of this argument.
Absolutely.
It's
Well, I guess you
laced
can.
Depends on
You
what
can try,
happens
yeah,
here.
yeah. By the way, a private school can come, try and talk out of both sides of its mouth also. Wait a second, where was I? So should education, first of all, do we agree that parents should be able to choose the learning environments that align with the values and best meet the children's individual learning needs?
Sure.
Okay?
But we
No
don't have to
problem.
serve that up. in a
Okay,
public institution.
who should pay for that? If they make a choice of a private school,
The individual parent.
they should, they should, but this says public education funding should follow the child to the private school. And that's our tax dollars paying that private school.
And we
You got-
know, factually, we know, true, hundreds of students in Flagler County at the beginning of the school year were given vouchers. And our own superintendent admitted this publicly,
They can't
had been
have-
given vouchers to attend private schools and home schools. Didn't like it. It was too much for some parents, because private schools have a lot of demands of parents. Walked away and walked into our public schools, but the money did not follow
Right,
them.
right.
The
Yeah.
money
This is just-
sat in the pockets of the parents at $8,500 a voucher or whatever it was. You know, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars.
For-
With no method, legally within the voucher system, there is no method
Admittedly.
of recouping those monies from those families.
So there was no requirement for them to like
Nope.
stay at the school.
Bad.
They,
for a
they,
period of
they,
time.
it's 40,000 in the state. 40,000 students took our dollars, tax dollars, as vouchers, and for a private school, and then showed up in the public school.
They don't have to take any test. They don't have
Yeah.
to prove that that kid learned a damn thing
Right.
during the year, not one thing.
And the teachers
You know,
don't have
and
to
the
do
Yeah.
that.
teachers don't have to be certified. And anybody, I mean, I would be overqualified to start a school because I have a master's degree.
Degree, yep.
Okay? You don't have to have diddly squat to set up one of these schools.
I've repeated here before my Leslie Postal story. Leslie Postal covers education for the Orlando Sentinel. She had been trying to get access to talk to a principal of our private school who was receiving a lot of voucher students, and in fact the school would fold without the voucher students. And she called and called and called and was always put off and always. Finally, some secretary said to her, I'm sorry, he's not able to talk to the principal because he's at school taking courses. He says, oh, what school is it? Valencia College. Says, oh, and what's he studying? He's a principal of the school, a lot of voucher. He's working on his AA degree.
Associates.
Associate degree. That is, he did not have an associate degree. But you don't have to. Teachers do not have to be high school graduates to teach in these private schools that are receiving voucher money. Yeah, there's no standards. In county schools within this state, teachers have to have degrees, supervised improvement, take continuing education courses, have credentials, and so on and so forth.
Follow a
Private,
curriculum.
follow a curriculum that's been,
They're graded on
yeah.
whether their students pass or don't pass, and how well they read and how well their math is. None of that applies to this other nonsense.
Yeah. So our money is being spent, there's no supervision, no nothing.
And in our local charter school, Imagine School, which seems to be doing pretty well, and a lot of
They're
the
holding
parents who, they're holding their own, it's a K-8 school, and a lot of the parents whose kids go there are happy with it. Our school administration has no say
Yeah.
in their
No.
how they're educating the kids, what their curriculum is, anything else. But their students' performance on tests affects our state, our
grade.
county's
Oh.
grade, our school's
Sure,
grade.
sure.
Yeah.
So,
Interestingly, Imagine is one of the schools that voluntarily participated in many of the administrative, not requirements, but, they fell in line. And
Yeah.
they attended meetings where the reading
Yeah.
coach was right from the curriculum department running the meetings. And they always tried to take advantage of those types of resources, which could, arguably, since they're one of maybe 5 or 6 years ago charter schools that started up and failed.
Yeah.
Maybe there's
Yes,
something to
many years
to
ago
their
there were
success
several.
because of that.
Yeah.
and they did fail.
But by the way, if you look at, we'll get to Ray, hang on, yeah. If you look at their test scores, they're very much comparable to Belterre Elementary, to Buddy Taylor Middle School,
Is the
to
budget
Old
rate based
Kings.
on these
And,
ratings,
yeah.
these evaluations? I mean, if
Yeah,
you-
budget,
Yeah.
yeah, like what state funding is tied to those ratings, yeah. No,
Yeah.
FTE is numbers, is number of kids, but the grades, there's funding that's attached to.
So there's an
school
incentive
grades.
there.
Or you
to-
mean like the bonuses? Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, the schools, the issue of the charter schools, however, is they do not have to accept every student. San Jose Prep in Duval County was discovered. It's interesting, the lowest 10% of the students were not permitted to re-enroll the next year. But the public schools have to take everybody. Yet, even getting rid of the lower 10%, their test scores are comparable to the local public school. There's no real benefit to charter school, except, as I've talked about before, perceived value that you think, oh, a private school, it must be, the perception is it's much better. In reality, it's not. But anyway, Ray, you've been patient. Go ahead.
Yeah, my question, maybe the librarian can answer the question.
Yeah, that's
When I
Kathy.
pulled up to this library, I must have passed it numerous times, and never noticed it because of the size, I guess. Where I'm from, this is like 1/3 of a library that's considered a main library. So is there a consideration of the libraries? What is the value of books that makes it considered it being a main library? That's what I'm trying to.
What's the criteria for a library to be a
Yeah.
main,
Yeah.
as opposed to like Flagler
A br- a
Library? which
branch.
is A branch.
Yeah,
I don't think it's a function of a number of books anymore.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
because
No.
where I'm from the north, the libraries are like almost like a
Right, I went to Hofstra University, I remember getting the email that, we have 1 million volumes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do I, it's in my pocket.
No,
right?
Well,
You know, so I mean-
now we're in a different world,
There
yeah.
are usually there are city libraries, and then there are county libraries. But because of the way Palm Coast sort of is like instant oatmeal, okay? And it was pretty far along
comparison.
before they formed the city. We have all county stuff here. We have the county sheriff, we have the county library, you know, that kind of stuff. There aren't as many city things, okay? In the older cities, they all had libraries, and then when they became incorporated into counties, then you had county libraries, which help coordinate, and they sometimes like get access to databases and audiobooks and stuff like that, that then they open up to the city libraries, you know? And that's what the state does. For the county libraries, it's sort of like this goes down the stream. But we don't have a city library, we only have county. So this is the main, and until they built that, this was it. And I didn't want to move here because of this library. When I first was looking here, this library was pretty effing sad. They had a terrible book budget, et cetera. But then their funding improved, and now they do pretty good on the books, although they had to give up
Yeah,
their
we are,
library
yeah.
loan because they can't afford to belong to the national network
Right.
anymore. But if you have a card at this library, you can get a card for free from either or both Volusia and St. Johns County. It's a cooperative agreement.
Right.
So when I'm writing something or I'm getting ready to publish something, I go to St. John's to interlibrary loan because they can't get it
Right.
from here. You
At
know,
any rate,
doesn't
with that, I'm afraid we have other people waiting to use this room. And we'd like to continue. We'll continue next week at
continue in
go
the
back at
parking
the
lot.
golf club. But, and when you come to the golf club, order food so that they'll be happy with us. And I'll check on the Palm Coast Democratic, the headquarters, the Flagler County Democratic headquarters. I want to thank you all for being here and for contributing to this discussion. Perhaps, and you could give me feedback. There's much more to this document that we can talk about, but I appreciate everyone being here. So,
I want to remind
quickly.
everybody, please, the last Ponderies from Palm Coast, Merrill and I spent an hour discussing this very subject with facts and figures and directions and comments. So this was a follow-on to that. So take a moment.
Yeah. Thank you all. Yeah, go look online, look on YouTube for this broadcast, and we'll see you next week.